I have no problem interacting with people, but interacting with gods, that's a different story. It's just my opinion, but a word of advice. Always be on your guard when around gods. You shouldn't place too much trust in them, but at the same time, don't go too far in the opposite direction. Don't go trying to overthrow them or hunt them down, even if the god in question is your sworn enemy.
The gods of Teyvat, if we can even call them that, are problematic. Whether they know or even recognize this fact, it doesn't change that they are still problematic. And no, I don't mean the gods up above in Celestia who gave humanity everything, such as the Four Shades, our beloved sustainer of heavenly principles, or the primordial one, a progenitor god, hailing from beyond the stars. No, when I say the gods of Teyvat are problematic, we all know who I'm referring to.
Beauty is a waste when the beholder has no taste.
Since you weren't used to not being able to just make more mora as and when you wanted to, you had to try becoming a parasite to society who lives off of other people's credit.
Well, we were only spending Fatui money. You don't have to say it like that.
Say the line, Bart!
Miko invited me here.
I'm very glad I got to meet you like this.
The reason the Enconomians were kept beneath the surface, the reason the Archon War necessitated the deaths of gods, could it be because the god race is a plague to humanity? Yesterday, we spoke about the revelation of the newest book, Perinheri, that the Curse of the Wilderness is in actuality a broad punishment applied to those who forsake and betray their gods. Thanks to this extra bit of knowledge, we have now come to understand why it is that hilichurls have existed for thousands of years before the Cataclysm. However, there's something we still don't understand, and it's whether the gods are even aware of this fact or not. And it's important to keep in mind, when I say the gods in this context, I'm not simply referring to the Archons, but rather every god who has ever had followers in Teyvat's history. Given all Angelica stated was, quotes, Leobrant is the descendant of those who forsook their god and came to the kingdom. This is why the kingdom's obstinately pure-blooded aristocracy persists. This is the price of betraying your own god. Whilst the story was taking place, the Archon War was presently going on, which means Archons don't exist yet. Hell, the entire reason Angelica was even in Conria was because Deus Ori killed her god. And we can go back even further by another couple thousand years to shortly after the war with the Second Who Came, as at the kingdom of Salvanir, the scribe Ukko, it would seem, was struck with this punishment and over time became a lawachurl. Now I do want to harp, however. Ukko's case is extremely weird, given Salvanir didn't have a singular god to betray, but rather Celestia itself. Divine envoys visited the kingdom before it was ruined by a nail. However, it's because of this nail that destroyed the civilization that Ukko would state, quotes, I yearn for those frosty skies to stand in flames and burn till there's no living soul in the world. I yearn for the black dragon from the princess's dreams to engulf the land in a cloud of scarlet poison. I've heard of people who are building a new nation without gods. Perhaps they'll have the power to stand against this world. Okay, let me just slide on in here. Clearly, this nigga is a fucking menace to society, alright? Let's... hey, he had it coming, alright? Let the world burn. That's some Unabomber shit right here, folks. This is not a functioning member of society. This is not. However, this suggests that should you follow any god in any form and betray them, you too will be struck with the punishments of the Curse of the Wilderness. But this, in and of itself, raises more questions than answers, such as what actually causes the curse to take effect. It's clearly not an immediate punishment. We've been told of other times of people betraying or abandoning their gods, such as the salt god Havria.
Salt. And betrayal.
Whose people literally... they just killed hers. I mean, well, fuck it then. Zhongli himself even calls this a betrayal. I assume the only reason her people didn't get hillied, I guess is a decent way to put it, was because Havria was feeling very Old Testament-y on the day she died, and when she was killed, everyone around her just turned into salts. But what about the sages of Sumeru who forsook Nahida? From the moment she was in prison to 500 years later, there's not a single report of a sage turning into a hilichurl, although with this case, I suppose it could be there's some sort of weird fucking technicality going on based on what Scaramouche says here.
Scholars consider the God of Wisdom to be the sum total of their faith. It's how they can justify reverence for a god as they construct it. But this also shows that humanity's worship of gods is a combination of blasphemy and exaltation. It's truly laughable.
So it could be they never truly forsook her, but while they were building a god, they were just delusional? I don't get it, bro. They were building a new god! That's gotta be like the worst form of betrayal, or, well, other than death, but like, my nigga, imagine Leo Brand's family was just like, man, I've had enough, I am out, I will not worship this god no more, and they left to Conria. These sages just stared at Nahida and was like, I want a new one. Nothing? They got nothing? Was it because they never lost their faith in Greater Lord Rukkhadevata? And so in that sense, they didn't actually, but even then, Scaramouche says, Boor, your people have abandoned you.
No wonder your own people have abandoned you, God of Wisdom.
Bro, they locked her in a cage, man, and just forgot about her. That's gotta be like the height of betrayal, my nigga. There's also this strange case of, holy fuck, Shirue, in which it's heavily implied some of the people of Jurabad turned into hilichurls with the tales of Sherure. Writing quotes, the next story I'll tell comes from the age of Sherure, the Lord of Pestilence, though at this time that vassal ruler had not yet gained notoriety for Sherure's plague, nor had his subjects been scattered amidst the world of darkness, left to become wild creatures who had lost their language and faces. To the best of my knowledge, Sherure wasn't a god. I know the text writes Lord of Pestilence, but in CN it states he was called the Plague King, so which god did his subjects betray? Regardless, the biggest mystery to be born from this whole thing is how are the pureblood Conrians immune to this punishment? You're telling me none of the founding people of Conria ever followed a god? I mean, to be fair, it seems as if the high-class Conrian aristocrats are aware of this curse and their immunity to it, which is why they refuse to sleep with outsiders, but again, how and why? Is it because they never followed a god, so there was no god to betray? That must have been quite the taboo back in the day. Or was it because something or someone is protecting them from it? Also, quick funny thought, but the book tells us that Rift Wolves existed during the Crimson Moon Dynasty. Dark Sprites is what they were called back then, which means Rheindoter is literally thousands of years old. I don't know why, I just thought she was like way younger than that, and I just thought like during the Cataclysm she was just like a young alchemist going crazy, but nah, she was just a boomer doing wild shit, huh? Anyway, the second major thing I wanted to talk about, or well, re-examine, was Celestia's motives for the Archon War. While I don't plan on replacing my theory on why I believe Celestia started the Archon War, I did just want to take a moment to think aloud and explore another possibility. A crack theory, if you will. All you fucking Dragon Sovereign fans just perked your head. Crack! Not that kind of crack, you fuck. I wanted to explore an alternative and much darker explanation that builds on the idea that the Archon War was a killing floor, a culling, if you will, meant to wipe out the gods. To move forward, let's just pretend everything I'm about to state is a hypothetical. To start, we must accept the source of the curses brought about by the all-devouring darkness, targeting the illusion of choice in the belief system set up by and for the gods. The all-devouring darkness is no doubt someone with close ties to the abyss, and would have a reason to hate the gods more than anyone else. Say, oh, the bastard crackhead dragon king, that was Nibelung. Nibelung was the second who came, who introduced the power of darkness when he returned to Teyvat, so as to challenge once more the primordial one, but lost, so shortly before his death used his powers to lay down a curse surrounding worship of the gods. So Celestia, seeing the gods have become a cancer to this world, initiated the Archon War to genocide as many of them from this world as possible, be it death or flight into the Dark Sea. So long as the number of gods before and after the Archon War dropped dramatically, it would mean the race is easier to control and humanity would be safer given there's less gods to worship. We know for a fact Celestia had a vested interest in as many gods as possible dying. during the war. It's been told to us numerous times. Kokomi's book tells us, quotes, Narukami it was that dominated the eastern islands, possessing great strength in war. And those deities defeated thus were all slain to the last, in accordance with the law of the divine realm. And Nahida echoes the same sentiment here.
All those losses were meaningless, driven by the demands of the laws. There's no point in bringing it up again.
It could be the reason death was mandated was because Celestia wanted to rid the world of as many gods as possible to consolidate people's worship of the gods into 7 beings, as opposed to however many existed before the war, thus making them less susceptible to the curse, and in turn making the world a safer and a better and a more wholesome place for humanity. Oh, God bless Celestia! Now, this is me just thinking out loud more than anything else, but it would explain why the Primordial One deliberately banned the Oikonomiyans from returning to the surface. Kinda. Maybe the ban was placed because if they re-emerged, they'd turn into monsters. The problem with this is, when they finally did return, no one turned into monsters, but thousands of years had gone by, so by that point, you never know. We know they succumbed to some sort of temptation, but whatever that temptation was is never stated, so we don't actually know if they betrayed the gods. Furthermore, the people of Oikonomiya prayed to the Primordial One, so it doesn't seem like they forsook them unless actions speak louder than words. Did the early people do something so egregious, such as summon a descender to warrant the punishments? But even this has its problems, because why then would the king of the crackheads, Nibelung, create this punishments on the people if it was in fact the people that summoned him? Does he really hate humanity that much regardless, and just only cares for the dragon race?